Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Historical Humans Reacts. And as if Cullum didn't curse us in the most recent Reacts video, humans are beavers. We like to control water, and one of our favorite things to do with water is to dam it up. And the United States is one of the world's leading examples of dams because the United States has a lot of rivers, a lot of watersheds, and one of the rivers that was dammed up was the Klamath River in Oregon and in California, which had a series of dams built between the 1940s and the 1960s, or 1920s and 1960s, that prevented flow of the river and caused quite a bit of ecological harm. And this was an interesting article that popped up, so figured it'd be worth speaking about.
Yeah. So the river itself, which is 257 miles long, was the third largest salmon producing river on the West Coast. It supported three different kinds of edible fish and was one of the main sources of nutrition for a number of indigenous tribes that lived in the um, Pacific Northwest. Uh, Starting in 1911, the United States began to dam up this river for the use in hydroelectric power. Naturally, this caused a massive decline in the food supply.
Yeah, because the salmon, which would swim upriver to lay their eggs and to hatch out the next generation, was no longer able to do that. So it directly disrupted that. But even more so, the rushing water and moving water, one of the greatest things that it does is it's self purifying. Moving
Yeah.
water cleans itself and helps remove toxins, pollutants, bad algae. And what ended up happening was once they dammed the river, that water became stagnant. So the flows of water was not able to flush out toxic algae, worms, and other organisms that cause disease to the fish. And the dams are finally reaching the end of their active use cycle. They're 50 years, so a lot of them are being sunsetted. And one of the things that they are trying to do is completely remove them. They're not trying to replace them. And
Yeah.
in doing so, they're restoring the flow to this river and enabling these wildlife populations to finally thrive again, to regain this area. And a lot of this was at the behest and at a lot of rallying by the Yurok tribe, who had relied on the rivers for decades, and it was a huge part of their cultural identity and their culture, and was one of the most prominent sources of food for their tribe.
And
So,
the yeah, and like the sort of insult to injury here, too, is that in 2002, after these dams had been around for 50 years, their presence actually caused a like near extinction event of the Chinook salmon in the river.
oh,
Like because the dams were at the end of their life cycle, they just weren't good dams anymore. So all the problems that came with being a dam and with it being a broken dam literally killed all the fish. This greatly offended the indigenous tribes who have been petitioning since, basically these dams were there to get them removed.
and one of the important things too that I think should be noted is a lot of these tribes, when they signed treaties with the United States in the 1800s, a lot of them signed it away with the expectation and with the rights of being able to hunt and harvest these natural resources and to have fishing rights and hunting rights. And the fact that the fish were dying off and the dams were causing so much issue, it really exacerbated that and prevented them from exercising their treaty rights, which is
Mm-hmm.
a huge, huge issue when you're talking about sovereign indigenous nations.
Yeah, definitely. And I I believe that in 2002 it was announced that the dams would be decommissioned, and now here in the start of 2024, The first of those dams is actually being decommissioned, like it has actually gone into effect, and the water is being allowed to flow freely from behind the dam, which has really helped cleanse a lot of the river and help to begin restoring the salmon populations.
And they've actually released the water behind 3 of the dams already. So the
Yep.
decommissioning process is really in a key stage where they're pulling the plug and they're just restarting. And this poses additional issues too, which is yet to exacerbate it. And probably one of the reasons they are trying to restore this environment is the severe droughts that have been overtaking the region, along with the extreme wildfires. The stages of climate change have really impacted the wildlife populations to the point where any effort to try and restore the environment is going to have a positive impact.
Yeah.
And that the fact that they're able to see the river flow for the first time in 100 years is phenomenal. And
Yeah, definitely.
one of the things I think would be kind of cool is the archaeology that's going to take place afterwards, because once these water levels start rescinding, a lot of times you will see archaeological sites eroding out of riverbanks and the sides of these dams and reservoirs.
Well, definitely we're going to start seeing what's probably where a lot of the construction camps from the early 20th century come into view, because most likely those would be on low ground near where they needed to build. So they'd have been underwater behind the dam.
I also wonder if there were any villages that were potentially flooded during it, because a lot of times they just didn't care. They would just move a village,
Mm-hmm.
house an entire population. But I was lucky enough to do a inspection on a large dam where, after a severe drought, the water levels had dropped significantly, and there was an old fur trading post, an 18th century fur trading post, where the stone foundations to the buildings were still present. And when we did the inspection, the site inspection, we ended up discovering a significant number of human remains, which had been eroded out of a nearby riverbank where there was a known indigenous burial site. So that is one of the things that will also need to be addressed when the dams are fully decommissioned and the water level goes back to its traditional level. It poses a lot of interesting questions that a lot of the local agencies and environmental services are going to have to combat.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely going to be a lot of things happening in the future here, but for the moment, at least,
It's a
it's good to
positive.
It's a good to celebrate the win of, this river being restored, this environment being restored, and this indigenous people having, a cultural icon that is by all rights theirs, restored to them.
Yeah. It's a huge win, and it's a huge win all around. You love to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's weird reporting good news on this show, because usually it's because something goes wrong.
I know we're kind of uncomfortable doing it. It just
Yeah.
it's a
We
weird
don't
feeling.
we don't know what to do. There's no one to be angry at. We can't condemn anyone for for saving the river.
And on that positive note, we're gonna end the episode for the first time ever. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.